We continue now at the top of Daf Pei Aleph Amid Beis Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 81b. On the previous summit, the Gemara is discussing the conditions that Yehoshua made when they settled Eretz Yisrael, and one of the conditions is that people can take branches, they can take shoots from the trees from anywhere, and one of the exceptions, the Gemara is going through various exceptions, and the final exception is Velomi Mokom Shehu Roes Achama. You can't take shoots from areas that see the sun. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, Umi Meged Tevuos Shamesh, again the idea of the Pasuk, that the sun is beneficial for these branches. As Rashi explains, Velomi Mokom Haroes Achama, Sevivos Staden Mibachutz, what it means is around on the outside of the tree, Memneshu Ikr Ha'ilon, because that's the main part of the tree, Shahachama Mevashelas Shames HaPriyum Amtiko, because that's where the sun, it ripens the fruits and makes them sweet, so you can't take from that area. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Umayon hayotze techila b'nei ha'ir mistapkin mimenu. If you have a spring that emerges for the first time, the people of the city are allowed to supply themselves from that spring. Amar Rabba bar Rav Huna says, V'nosein lo damim, you have to pay the person if it's in private property. But the Gemara says, V'les hilchasa kavase, that this is not the halacha. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Umechaken b'yom shel Tiveria, one is allowed to fish in the Sea of Tiveria, uvilvad shelo yifros kela v'yamidus asfina, as long as he doesn't spread a fence which is going to impede the boats. The next line the Gra takes out, but the next line is avol tzadhu b'rishtos uv'mechmaros, one is allowed to fish with nets and traps. And the Gemara continues, Tana Rabban, and the rabbis taught, Borishona hisnu shvatim zeh im zeh shelo yifros kaliya. In the beginning, the shvatim, the tribes, they made conditions with one another not to spread these kinds of fences, v'yamidus asfina, which would impede the boats. Avol tzadhu, again, but a person is allowed to fish, b'rishtos uv'mechmaros, with nets and traps. And the Gemara continues, Tana Rabban, and the rabbis taught, Yama shel Tiveria b'chelko shel Naphtali haisa. The Sea of Tiveria was in the portion of Naphtali. V'lo'od, and not only that, ela shenatal molei chevel chayrim b'deroma, they also took a portion in the south, the length of a full rope trap, l'kayim mashenemar, to fulfill that which it says in the pasuk, Yom v'derom Yerusha, that he would inherit the sea and the south. And the Gemara continues, Tanya, we learned in a Brayso, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Talushin shebaharim, that which is detached among the mountains, becheskas kol hashvatim hein omnim, that's considered to be in the possession of all of the tribes, not just the tribe that owns that particular mountain. Umechubarim, but that which is attached to the ground, like the trees, becheskas oso hashevet, that is in the possession of that particular shevet. V'yein lecha kol shevet v'shevet miYisrael, and there's no tribe from among Klal Yisrael, she'ein lo baharu v'shvela, uvenegev uve'emek, that does not have portions of the mountains and the lowlands and the countryside and the valleys. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Penu sulachem uvo harhu emori vel kol shchena ba'arava b'hara b'ashvela uvanegev uvechof hayam v'gomer. It says go to the area of the Emori, and it lists all these kinds of terrain. V'cheina tamotzi b'knanim uvaprizim uvemorim. The same you find by the Knanim, Prizim, and the Emori. Shelifneim, that word Shelifneim is taken out by the Bach. Shenemar, as it says, Ve'el kol shchenav, to all of its neighbors. Alma, we see from that pasuk, Shechenav hachi havet, that the same is true by the neighbors, meaning all of those who inhabited Canaan, they all had all these kinds of terrain, and that's what Klal Yisrael inherited. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, V'nifnin la'achore hageder, one is allowed to go to the bathroom behind the person's fence, V'afilu b'sada shimalei acharkom, even of a field that's full of saffron. Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov says, Lo nitzrucha, the reason why this teaching is necessary, Elalito l'heimenu tzror, it's talking about taking a rock. You're even allowed to take a rock from the person's wall to use that when you go to the bathroom. Amar Rav Chisda says, V'afilu b'Shabbos, that's true that you could take it even on Shabbos. On Shabbos you might think it's a problem of destroying, but it's going to be allowed for this purpose. Mar Zutra Chasida Shakel Umhader, Mar Zutra the pious, he would take, but he would always return it to the owner. V'amar le l'shame zil shirke, and then he would tell his servant that the next day that servant should go and he should cement up that part of the wall. And Rashi explains, Amar le l'shame b'chol, he would tell his attendant on the weekday, Sharke tachayu betit v'chibreu yafa, you should take plaster again and you should attach it properly. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Umahalchin b'shvile harishos ha'chetered reviya shnia, a person is allowed to walk in the permissible paths even on private property until the second rain comes. Amar Papa says, V'haidi done, but when it comes to our land, afilu tal kashila, even the dew is difficult for it. And Rashi explains, V'hakarka didan, our land, meaning again the land of Bavel, afilu tal yardale belayla, even if dew falls on that land at night, kashala drisas haregel mimachara, so the next day if you step on that land, it's going to damage it, and therefore that is not going to be permitted. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. So Mesalkin Litzide Hadrachim, if Neisedos Hadrachim, one is allowed to go to the sides of the roads if there are obstacles in the road. Shmuel of Rav Yehuda have a shakli va'azli bu'orcha. Shmuel and Rav Yehuda, they were going on the road. Have a mistalik Shmuel Litzide Hadrachim, and Shmuel was going at the side of the road. Amar le Rav Yehuda said to him, Tanoin Shizne Yehoshua, Afilu Bavel, these conditions that Yehoshua made, they apply even in Bavel. You're allowed to go on private property on the sides of the roads in this case. Amar le, he said to him, Shani Omer, Afilu B'chutz La'aretz. I say that it applies not only in Bavel, but even in Chutz La'aretz. Rabbi v'Rav Chia have a shakli v'azli b'orcha. Rabbi and Rav Chia, they were going on the road. Istalko Litzide Hadrachim, and again they went to the side of the road. Have a kamafsiya v'azol Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanusa kamayu, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanusa, he was taking large steps in front of them. He wasn't going to the side of the road, but he was stepping over the obstacles. Amar le Rabbi le Rabbi Chia, so Rabbi said to Rabbi Chia, Mi hu zeh shemara gedula b'faneinu. Who is this person who is showing how great he is in front of us, as if he's being so arrogant that he's not taking advantage of the leniency to go on the side of the road. Amar le Rabbi Chia said to him, Shemer Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanusa, Talmidihu, maybe it's Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanusa, he's my student. V'chol ma'asav l'shem shamayim, everything that he does is for the sake of heaven, it's not out of arrogance. Kimatu l'gavi, when they reached him, Chazi, they saw him. Amar le, and he said to me, Lav Yehuda ben Kanusa, if not for the fact that you are Yehuda ben Kanusa, Gizartinu l'shakach begizra de parzala, I would cut off your legs with iron shears. And Rashi explains, begizra de parzala kilomar nidvei, that Rabbi was saying to him that I would ostracize you if not for the fact that you were Yehuda ben Kanusa. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Hatoa ben hakramim, if somebody is lost among the vineyards, mafsik v'yored, mafsik v'yola, he can cut through the vines in order to get out. Tanu Rabban, and the rabbis taught, Haroech haver Hatoa ben hakramim, if somebody sees his friend who's lost among the vineyard, masik v'ola, mafsik v'yored, he can cut up and cut down, he can cut the vines, Adshem ha'aleu l'ir, until he brings them to the city, or l'derech, or to the road, v'chein hu, and also by him, Shatoa ben hakramim, if he is lost among the vineyards, mafsik v'yola, mafsik v'yored, he can cut the vines up and down, Adshiyala l'ir, or l'derech, until he makes his way to the city or to the path. And the Gemara says, Mai v'chein, what does it mean likewise by him? And the Gemara explains, Ma'u d'tema, what might you have said? Chaveruhu d'yada lehecha misalik d'nifsuk. When it comes to his friend, he's helping his friend get out, so he knows where he's cutting. So that's okay. Aval hu d'lo yada lehecha kasalik, but if it's just him where he has no idea where he's going, so lo nifsuk, so maybe he shouldn't really be allowed to cut through because he's going to do a lot of damage to the vineyard. Nahadre by mitzri, maybe he has to just go around, meaning get out of the area of the actual vineyard to the outside and go all around the boundary. Kamash Malan, so it comes to teach us, no, even in that situation where he doesn't know exactly where he's going, he's allowed to cut through the vineyard. And the Gemara says, Hado Raisu, but this halacha, this is not one of the conditions of Yoshua, this should be a halacha mido Raisa. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Hashavas Gufo Minayin, how do you know that to return a person himself, that's also included in Hashavas Aveda? Talmud Lomar, Vahashevoso, that's what it says, Vahashevoso. So here the person is lost, you're essentially returning him, so therefore it should be a Doraisa. And the Gemara explains, Doraisu dekoy be mitzri. Also, hutakin the mafsik viola mafsik v'yord. On a Doraisa level, again, the person would have to go all around the outside of the vineyard. And so Yehoshua came along and made a takana that the person is allowed to cut his way out through the vineyard. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. This is the last of the stipulations of Yehoshua. Meis mitzvah kana mekomo. A meis mitzvah acquires his place where the body is. And the Gemara says, in Mini, we have the following contradiction. Hamotze meis, if somebody finds a dead body, mutal besrati, in the middle of the public thoroughfare, mefaneu liyamin israti, or the small israti, he can clear it to the right side of the road, or the left side of the road. Sedei voru, stay near. Let's say he has on the sides of the road, there's one field that's fallow, and one field that has been plowed, mefaneu l'stei bor, so then it's better to put the body by the field that has not yet been plowed. Sadanir v'sadazera, if you have a field that's been plowed and a field that's been sown, you already planted seeds, mefaneu l'sadanir, so then you clear the body into the field that's only been plowed. Hayu shtein boros, shtein niro, shtein zeros. Let's say the fields are all the same. They're both fallow, they're both plowed, or they both have seeds. Mefaneu l'makav sheyirtza. So then you clear the body to wherever he wants to clear it. And so therefore it's a question because it says kana mekomo. We said that one of the stipulations of Yoshua is exactly where the body is. That's where you bury the body. And the Gemara says, Amar Rabivi says, B'mutal al hametzer. We're talking about a situation where it is in an area that's a very narrow area. Mitoch shenitin lefnoso. If it's a narrow area, you're already allowed to clear it. So then mefanei l'makav sheyirtza. So then already you can clear it. He can clear it to the place that he wants. And Rashi explains, mefanei, again, he clears the body. Al malo kana mekomo. You see that the body does not acquire its place. The kana mekomo, because if it acquired its place, matzi bal hasad shal yamin v'shal smol likuve. Then the person who owns the fields at the side, either the right side or the left side, can say, you can't use use my field, it's kana mekomo, it has to be buried in its place. And the Gemara answered, Al HaMeitzer, what does it mean, Al HaMeitzer? Mutal baroch of aderech. Let's say it's going across the entire width of the road. V'yovenu mahilan olav osetaros and metamos. Now you have a problem. People who need to keep things pure, they won't be able to go on that road. So there again, you're allowed to clear it, and you follow the rules that we set forth in the Braisa. And the Gemara continues, Amri, they said, Asara hani chad sari havin. What do you mean that Yoshua made 10 conditions? There are actually 11 conditions that were in that list. And the Gemara says, Mahalchin b'shvilei rishus, that condition that people are allowed to walk in the permissible paths on private property, Shlomo Amra, that actually wasn't from Yoshua, that was actually from Shlomo HaMelech. Kedetani, as we learned in a Braisa, Hareisha kalu peirosim and asad, if all of his fruit has been cleared from the field, ve'eno meniach b'nei adam likonis b'soch sadeyu, and he doesn't let people go through his field, maha brios omros olav, what are people going to say about such a person? They'll say, maha no yesh lepoloni, what benefit is he getting? Umaha brios mazikos lo, and how are they doing any damage? Why is he not letting them do something which causes him no harm? All of HaKasav Omer, and about such a person, the Pasuk says, Miyos tov al tikre ra. If a person can do good, so don't do bad, don't be called evil. The Gemara says, Umichsiv miyos tov al tikre ra. Is there even such a pasuk of miyos tov al tikre ra? What are we quoting over here? And the Gemara says, in yes, ksiv ki haigavna. There's a pasuk that's similar. The pasuk says, Al timna tov mi baila biyos lo liyadecha lasos. You shouldn't refrain from doing good, again, if it's possible for you to do that good. But the Gemara continues, V'suleka, but were there no other takanas of Yehoshua when it came to Eretz Yisrael? We have other ones. V'ayikot Rabbi Yehuda, what about the one of Rabbi Yehuda? There is the takana that Rabbi Yehuda mentions, the Tanya, as we learned in the Braisa, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says, B'shas hotzoas zavolim, when the people would take out the manure, Adam motzi zivlo l'Rosh Hashanah, a person would put the zevel out in Rosh Hashanah, v'tzovro kol shloshim yom, he would let it sit there for 30, kol shloshim rather, he'd let it sit there for 30 days, kedei she'enisha b'ragli adam v'ragli behema, that way it would be tread upon by people's feet and by animals' feet, and that helped it be good as fertilizer. Shalmanas Kain Hinchel Yehoshua Yisrael as Aretz. It was on that condition that Yehoshua allowed Klal Yisrael to settle the land. So here's another condition of Yehoshua, and we have another one. And there's also the following: the Rabbi Yishmael Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. There's the one of Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Rabbi Yishmael Beno Shel Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka Omer. Rabbi Yishmael, the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka, says, Tanai Bezin, who there's a condition of Bezin, that a person can go down into the field of his friend. The code says shocho shel chavero, and he can cut. The shocho is like the main branch from the tree of his friend, lahatzil nechil shalo, in order to save his beehive. V'nosen lo demei shocho shel chavero, and then he'll pay him back the value of that branch that he cut. U'tanai Bezin, and furthermore, it's a condition of Bezin, shofech yeno, that a person should pour out his wine, umatzil dovshano shel chavero, and then he can save the honey of his friend. Let's say you need a barrel or you need a container for the honey. He can pour out his wine and save that honey. V'notel d'meyenu, and then he could take the value of that wine that he spilled, mitoch dovshano shel chavero, from the honey of his friend. And furthermore, tonight Bezin, it's a condition of Bezin, sheyeza mefarik es eitza v'toin pishtano shel chavero, that a person should unload from his animal the wood in order to carry the flax of his friend. V'notel d'mei eitza mitoch pishtano shel chavero, and he could take the value of that wood from the flax of his friend. Shalmanaskein hinchil Yehoshua liYisrael asars. It was on that condition that Yehoshua allowed Klal Yisrael to settle the land. And so you have all of these other conditions of Yehoshua. And the Gemara says, B'yechidoi lo karminu. We're not talking about conditions that were just said by one Tana. All of these were just said over by one Tana. We're talking about ones that was a consensus that were said over by a majority of Tanoim. And Rashi explains, Nechil shel devorim, again a beehive, sheholchu l'sad chaver, they went to the field of his friend, v'nisiyashva shochsa shalila, and they settled on this major branch of the tree. V'mitol echad hein porchos v'ovdos. If you take them one at a time, so they're porchos v'ovdos, they're just going to fly off and be lost. Me'achar shenasnu einen ba'os ha'shocha, because they've already settled on this branch. Lefikach kotzitzav v'nosin lo dam, and that's why he just cuts off the whole branch and he pays its value. And Rashi continues, Umatzil duvshano, the person saves the honey of his friend. Zeba b'chado shel yain, this one has his pitcher of wine. Zeba b'chado shel dvash, the other one has his container of honey. V'nistacha chavesh shel dvash, and then there's a crack in the container of the honey. V'chein zeba b'chavilas pishin al chamor, or similarly, you have a person with a bundle of flax on his donkey. V'zeba b'chavilas eitzim, another person comes with a bundle of wood. Umeis chamor shel bal pishin, and the donkey of the one that's carrying the flax dies. Yifrak zeh seitzav v'toano, the person who has the wood should take off the wood and instead take the flax and again get paid back. To Rabbi Yehuda, to Rabbi Yishmael, Yechidoi Ninu, and again the Gemara said, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yishmael, those are just minority opinions. Uvraisa dasara tanoim stamahi, but the Braisa, which has the 10 conditions, that's just listed stam, meaning to say it's like a majority opinion, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph.